Welcome to News 18 Showsha. I'm Yatamanyu Narain and I'm with Kamakshi Khanna, who has been making major strides in independent music scene in India. And she has come out with her latest single, which is Naya, which is a very powerful song. And we are going to talk about that and rest of her music. Hello, Kamakshi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So happy to be here.
Right. So, I love Naya. I mean, it's a very powerful track, like I said, and it's such a tree to the ears in the way, it has been composed. So, what was your journey with this song? And, I love the blend of R&B and EDM with this song. So, what can you tell us about it?
When I released Qareeb around 4 years ago in 2020, it was the first time I actually explored R&B soul, but in Hindi as a language. And
Right,
people really received that well. And I also love both those worlds so much. And they're such a
right,
huge part of me. So I wanted to kind of explore doing something like that again. So
right,
Naya was an experiment for me to try something different, but in a very opposite sense when it comes to the narrative and the story behind it. Kareeb is like this happy, cheesy love song, while Naya is the complete opposite of that, which is like about not wanting or needing
right,
a relationship in your life to find fulfillment, which is the stage that I was in when I wrote it.
right.
Um, and yeah, I got to work with Sami Rahat, who helped me write the
Yes,
song, wrote the lyrics, co-composed it, and Rishi dropped out, the producer. So it was a very collaborative, long journey.
right,
Initially, we released the 1 minute music version exactly a year ago, actually,
right.
and that received a lot of love. That was in a more like I would say dancey,
Yes,
like very very up tempo space. But I wanted to have a more laid back uh,
right,
version of the song as well. That sounds more like me. So
right.
that's why I explored the longer version of the song.
Right, right. So I also wanted to know how this song is, a beacon for all those who are stuck in, manipulative or abusive relationships.
The song is about a relationship that's manipulative and abusive.
Right,
And for me, it was, I wrote it when I moved to Bombay.
right,
This was after a relationship in my life that really just, it was abusive and for both of us. And I think once I got out of it and when I moved cities, I realized that the voice in my head for a very long time was not mine. It belonged to the people who may have put me down in my life before, relationships that may have made me feel small. And I think the process of unlearning those things about yourself and the process of rediscovering parts of you that were completely lost. Because I think the saddest part is when you lose the parts of yourself that you love in a relationship, when
yeah,
you stop relating to the person that you look at in the mirror. And that is a very scary and eerie feeling, which is what I experienced. And Naya is about that. It's about starting a new chapter. It's about unfolding a new version of yourself and finding the strength to get out of something that's not good for you. And I
yes,
hope that people who are experiencing it, can listen to the song and feel empowered.
connect,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So, you have been in the independent music scene for about a decade now. And I mean, your first EP, which was much mellow, was released in 2014 and it would be completing 10 years next year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
what can you recall about that time when it was, first released? And I mean,
Mm.
what artists were your primary influences when you were, working on that particular EP?
Yeah. My trajectory as an artist has been kind of ulta, like because generally people start with like singles and put out slowly and then release an album. But I was just a very over enthused 21-year-old who wanted to like, release everything she wrote ASAP, which is very different from what I am now. So I put out the first 4 songs that I wrote. I just put them as a part of an EP, and it actually I feel like they aligned quite well with each other. And then I released an album, and
Right,
since then, I've kind of been doing singles and,
right,
trying very different sounds. But at that time, it was one of the best phases of my life. Like, I did not, nobody cared at that time. When you're starting out, you don't really care about numbers. You don't really care about like the pressure of, success because you're just trying something new for the first time. And that joy, that like childlike joy that you feel when you release your music for the first time is like, it's kind of the honeymoon phase, as I like to think about it,
right,
in your relationship with your
right,
art and music.
right.
So when I think about that, I just feel so happy, and it also reminds me and brings me back to the fact that I have such a supportive like family, supportive friends who are still the same people who were there during my EP launch back in
They're still there.
actually are
Right,
still the same people who are listening to my music now and are supporting me. So it just makes me like really happy to think about my journey so far. And
right.
yeah.
Right. So I wanted to know the influence because Marshmello was very acoustically rich, and it
Yeah.
sort of reminded me of Taylor Swift's earlier albums like
Yeah.
Fearless and Speak Now.
My
So
influence during that time was like artists like Nora Jones,
yeah,
Sarah Bareilles. Um, Taylor Swift is someone I've actually gotten into a lot more now. At that
right,
point, I wasn't listening to her much.
right,
But yeah, I think that was my influence. I used to love it's something that's been carried for so many years. At that point, I called the genre. I kind of laugh about it now. But we had like an EP launch at India Habitat Center,
yeah,
amphitheater, and I heard about this really cool genre called Baroque pop, which now I know that it wasn't that. So I remember calling my EP Baroque pop. But I think the reason I did that was because it was pop with a lot of like cinematic elements, with a lot of strings. Even in my first EP, I had a lot of strings.
right,
I was also very inspired by Regina Spektor because her music is like kind of, if you hear her melodies, if you hear her like the kind of work, the elaborate arrangements that she has, they're very like, they remind you of classical music, Western classical music. And my voice was also very influenced by Western classical at that point. I was singing a lot of opera, I was singing Hindustani classical. So I feel like at that point, Baroque pop actually was the genre that made sense to me. It just sounds
right,
really pretentious now,
right.
but
Which,
I think that was my influence at
right,
that.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you started in 2014, like you said, and it was a time when independent music scene in India was not very good. Now, not like it's right now. So I mean, what sort of obstacles like you had to face or overcome, and what kind of response did the EP initially receive?
Yeah. I think when I was releasing the EP, it was quite like we didn't have the kind of uh,
Yeah,
you know,
Spotify or streaming services.
we didn't have the kind of like services even on social media. Like, even though Instagram, I don't like might have, yeah, it existed. It wasn't a place where, you could easily share your music and could reach
Yeah,
people. It was very sweet and like you would reach your friends, you would reach your family, but wouldn't like reach out to a
yeah,
completely new audience. Metrics
right,
weren't such a thing. It was just a place where you share pictures about your life, right?
correct.
Um, so it was definitely an obstacle. But at that point, I was also doing backing vocals for Euphoria. I was also doing like, so for me, it was always like doing a bunch of like other work on the side to be able to support my EP, to be able to record my EP in the most low budget, most like easy ways possible. And I had the best band at that point. Keshav Dhar was producing my music. I still work with him. He still mixes a lot of my stuff. And Pranav Pava, who's I still work with, like he also played on Qareeb. Tarana Marwa, who's now everybody knows her as Komorebi and she's killing it. So Ishan Gandhi, Anugrah Pani. So all these guys were my core band in Delhi. And I don't remember it being hard because I had so much fun doing it. Like now, if
Yes.
you ask me the obstacles, like it doesn't even come to me because then they felt like, oh, this is the hardest thing in the world. But now when I think back, what a fun thing to be doing as a 21-year-old, like, releasing an EP, playing with your best friends. It was just a really beautiful time. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So, I mean, coming to your first proper album, which was Cakewalk, and
Yeah.
the album felt like a cathartic experience when I first heard, and it was brilliantly composed to begin with, and it felt very relatable. So, I mean, what was the story behind working on that album, and uh, what are your favorite tracks from it?
Yeah, I have like a strange relationship with that album, honestly, because Cakewalk was once again, I feel like a bunch of singles that were just put together because I was just so excited to just put it out into the world.
Then,
Um, but I really enjoyed Hold Your Horses. I think that was a really fun. That was the first time I started adding a little bit of like sass and a little bit of like quirk to my songwriting style.
right.
It was a little more bold than it used to be. Um, Cakewalk is definitely one of my favorite songs. I actually
Mhm.
wrote the album when I was studying at Global Music Institute. So that whole album is a product of like understanding, studying songwriting, and like putting everything together. Apart from that, Little is a song that I really like. I haven't even like
Lovely.
performed them in so many years. They're like a distant memory now. Like even talking about them brings me me back to a whole other time of my life.
Right.
I'm in my own ways a song that I really like. We even shot a music video. I tried, I think, however, is I feel like my most well-written song on that
Right.
album. And I
Right.
think it received the most amount of love as well. Um, but we shot I'm in my own way, and I tried in my parents' holiday home in Bhavali. So we also have videos out for that. But that entire album, I would say again, is like kind of in the space of much mellow. But that's when I started kind of bringing R&B soul as a genre into my music, and since then I've kind of tried to follow through with that. Yeah.
So, coming to your breakthrough song, which was Qareeb, and it was released, during COVID-19 pandemic, and it sort of introduced you to a more mainstream kind of an audience out there, and it was
Mm.
the first Hindi track, I think, no? Right?
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
was.
was the
Yeah.
first Hindi track, and so what made you switch to a different language altogether? And was it because you didn't want to limit yourself to one particular language, and you also wanted to, reach a larger audience for your music?
Yeah. So I sing, I've always been singing in Hindi and English equally. I would say maybe Hindi as a singer, I feel like I sound more natural because it's something I've grown up with, let's be real. Like I've grown up listening to Bollywood more than I've grown up listening to, a lot of the artists that inspire my songwriting. But the thing is, when it comes to writing lyrics, when it comes to like expressing myself through my art, my instinct is to think in English. My instinct is to write in English.
Right.
Just because of what I've studied and the kind of background that I have. But I really wanted to write in Hindi. It was just a limitation. It was like every time I would try, it wouldn't really work out. But with Qareeb, it actually was a high pressure situation where I was pitching for something. Somebody called me and said, "We need a Hindi female singer songwriter. This is a great opportunity. You have to write a song." And I remember Abhilasha Sinha and
Mhm.
we were on a call. We were like, shit, we don't have Hindi songs. What do we do? What do we do? So she wrote Tum Ho Yahan during that phase, and I wrote Qareeb. And that's how the song was written. Like I wrote it in like half an hour because I had to write it for a project that I was pitching for. Thankfully, I got rejected from that project. And I was like, okay. Because otherwise, I would have had no control and it would have been very like random. But when I wrote it, I was like, shit, there's something really amazing here, and I like the song. Like I realized that it was stuck in my head. Initially, when I wrote it, I was like, oh wow, so cheesy. Like this is so
Right.
because I wrote it on the ukulele, it was sounding very different as well. And then I made a couple of people hear it and they were like, okay, this is really like fun. Like it's
Right.
stuck in my head. Like one thing that everybody said was Kareeb is like stuck in my head. So
Right.
that's how I like followed through. I reached out to Anhad and Tanner to produce it. Pranav Pava played the guitar on it,
Right.
and we all just had so much fun working on that song. Like it was a total of 2 sessions, three like drafts here and there. It just came naturally to all of us. And then I pitched it to Artist Originals, which was a label back then, Geo Savant label. And that was my first time working with the label as well. And we were all really geared up to release it. And then the lockdown hit us. And that was the time when I was supposed to shoot it. Like I canceled my music video. I was supposed to be in the music video, I think a week before the shoot.
Right.
Um, and we went into the lockdown and we released everything, did the entire marketing campaign. And that was also my comeback after like 4 years.
4 years.
Sorry, 3 years of not releasing music. So it was just a project that was like, it was like a big hug that, come back into music. Like, you should keep releasing music. And I felt really supported by the people around me and the
Right.
collaborators that I worked with. Yeah.
So, I mean, what sort of trajectory will your music take in the coming times? I mean, are you going to stick to this R&B and EDM kind of vibe, or are you going to, experiment with other genres as well?
Yeah. So, of course, I'm going to keep releasing a lot of Hindi music. I have a lot of exciting. Tomorrow, I'm releasing a song actually, which
Oh,
is a special collaboration. It's a song called Dil Ye Nadan Hai with Kanishk Seth, which has been
right,
like a dream collaboration for a while. And
right,
Sumanshu. We all wrote it at a songwriting camp in Goa, which was organized by Represent, the management company that manages both Kanishk and I.
right.
And that's very different from anything that I've done. Like I
Okay.
it's definitely like, but I'm so excited because it's something I've always wanted to do. It's different. It's definitely might confuse some people who listen to my music. Like what is that? Because it's very different from what I've done. But I think it's really exciting. I think I'm very happy that I pushed myself to try something new. and it's really gentle, it's really soulful, and at the same time a really fun song. So I'm putting that out, but after that I'm actually finally releasing my English music again, in
Right,
the form of long form content. I'm releasing an EP
right,
early next year, so I'm
right,
kind of going back to releasing English
right,
music the way that I want to. That EP is R&B, soul, folk, and pop. Like I would say, it's a mixture of all of those things, and it's just really vulnerable, really emotional. The most vulnerable piece of work that I'm going to be putting out in a long time, and have
right,
put out in a long time. Have some really exciting visuals and stories, and shows and tours planned for the year.
right.
So definitely going to be a time where I'll reinvent myself, but at the same time maintain the things that whoever's been following my journey as an artist know me for. So I'm really excited to find that blend and share my story through my
Right,
music.
right. I'm really hyped about it now. So,
Yeah.
like you said, you are a very collaborative artist and you have collaborated with a whole bunch of artists in your career, like, Sangeeta Bhattacharya, Oaf, and so many others. So, I mean, how do you pick these collaborations and what are some of your mental parameters that you check before you teaming up with someone?
Firstly, of course, like if I like their music, like if it touches something like my soul, or like makes me feel like, okay, I know what they're talking about, or
Right,
I think for me it's also conversations. Like if I meet somebody and I feel like the conversation is easy, and I feel like we can talk about art and we can talk about things that we have in common, then it becomes easier.
right,
And both Kabir and Sanjeeta and so many other collaborators that I've worked with, there's always been something human. There's a human connection there. There's something really real about why we wanted to collaborate with each other. So
right,
I think that's what matters to me the most. And then, of course, you know, just giving each other that space and respect, and also understanding, like that all of both of us will have inputs, and both of us have a different ideas sometimes and opinions. So I feel like when it's a space where ideas are allowed to flow very naturally and very freely, that's when I feel like, okay, this collaboration is amazing.
right,
And I've been really lucky with the people I've collaborated with. I think I've never had a collaboration that's felt like it's not, it didn't feel great or it wasn't worth it. Like it's always been, I've just been lucky with the kind of people that
right.
I've worked.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where do you see the independent music scene growing from here? And how can, artists, budding artists, can take a plunge in this ocean, which is, very limitless and which is very, vast? How can they, take that first step in this, career?
I think it's definitely like a great time to be an independent musician. Of course, there are pros and cons with everything that's going on today. But in general, I think the fact that discoverability is so much easier. You can be discovered anywhere, wherever you are in your room. You have so much agency as an artist now. You can
Right,
do things on your own. I think using those tools as much as possible is a great way to do it. But at
right,
the same time, I'm also struggling with this. But I think, um, you know, really having your own voice as an artist, that's become a little bit of a struggle these days, because, on social media and in generally, like the digital world has become very like trend based, and
right.
it's become very like you have to put it
Viral.
in a box very
Exactly.
easy. Like
Exactly.
it's very easy. Either you're in that 30-second reel box, or there's a particular trend that you have to follow. You have to kind of mold yourself to
Exactly.
fit
Exactly.
something. But I think the true fulfillment as an artist is defying that, is to really find what you want to say, and how are you going to change the trend, how are you going to start a new trend. Of course,
New trend.
trends are great,
Exactly.
but like everything is a trend by the end of the day. Like everybody starts something, nobody is doing anything profoundly unique anymore, unfortunately. It's 2023, and
Right.
like so much art has been made. But
Right.
I think still having something to say, finding your own voice, spending time with yourself and your art, I think it's really important for me, I think, to find fulfillment. Like
Right.
because otherwise it feels a little like fleeting. So
Yeah.
I think that's the way. That's what I would say to artists who are planning to put out their music. Yeah.
Right. So, do you also have aspirations to, sing in mainstream Bollywood films or, OTT?
Yeah, definitely. I think over the lockdown, it was kind of crazy, like the way things worked out. Dude got picked up for Madhuri Dixit's web
Yes,
series.
exactly.
And I think what was really cool is that, yes, it's always been an aspiration of mine to sing for Bollywood films and sing
Right.
for OTT. I think a lot of people, it's also a little unfortunate that it used to be. Now I feel like it's 10,000 times better. You'll find artists like, Raghav Niatil, for example, who's releasing his own music, but he's always doing stuff for OTT. So many artists,
Uh,
Mali, like just so many. I can't even, like, there are too
yes,
many names right now in my head, who are like acting in films, who are doing ads, who are their music is being picked up, they're doing playback singing. So the boundaries are really like blurred right now, and nobody's judging anybody for doing anything, which is amazing. I think earlier there was like an independent music is independent music and commercial music is commercial.
bracketed, yeah, like you were saying. Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was like very bracketed and very like,
yeah.
a little clicky, I feel. But now I think those boundaries are being like shattered and everybody's happy to do everything. Bollywood artists are like, collaborating with independent producers and independent artists. They're wanting them in on their work. So I think it's a great time that way to be an artist. Like it's opening up all the doors that were shut
Slowly
are
open.
now like open and all the different brackets are like connecting with each other, which is really nice to witness.
Interesting. So finally, I mean, how excited are you about your Lollapalooza performance? And I mean, what should people look forward to who are going to attend your live show?
I am really excited for my
Right,
Lollapalooza. Something I attended it last year and I was blown away with like the scale and the quality and the kind of artists that I saw and the number of people that were there. The fact that now a year later I'm going to actually be performing there with my band is quite surreal.
right,
I'm also going to be performing with a nine-piece setup, which
right,
is freaking me out, but I'm really excited. I'm going to have strings, horns, backing vocals. I'm going to share some of the details a little later,
right,
but I think it will be a really rich, a really huge sound,
right.
which I've always wanted to like, strive for, and I'm finally have that stage and opportunity to do it. And I'm really excited for people to hear what I have in store for them. And I also will be previewing my EP that I'll be releasing that time. And there'll be a
Nice.
single as well that some people may have heard of. I started this series in the lockdown called the Green Room Sessions, which was basically just very spontaneously me sharing the songs that I wrote in the lockdown and isolation with
Yeah.
people. And that received a lot of love. So now those songs are finally seeing the light of day, and I'm putting them into much bigger productions and doing some really interesting and really fun stuff with them.
Right.
So finally happy to share that, and I think Lollapalooza will be the first time people will hear it that way.
So yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you so much, Kamakshi. I mean, lovely speaking with you, and getting to know more about your music and that your journey, your wonderful journey behind it. And I'm looking forward to your EP and the single that is coming out. So
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank
yeah,
you.
and congratulations. Very best of luck.
Thank you for having me.